I just got a command. Should I do anything?
Okay. All right, then. We're now live on YouTube, and now I'm ready to start the audio in three, in two, and one. Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today, we are very pleased and very honored to be joined by a very interesting person named Ken Jessup. He's here now. So basically, you were born in 1948. Walk through the life journey and really focus on all the different interesting advocacy and lobbying that you've done. And I really want to break down your whole philosophy. So just start your journey. Your hour starts now, and I'll interject when I need to. Go right ahead.
Well, good morning, good day, and good afternoon, and good evening for everybody all around the world. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
You're always welcome. Always welcome here.
And this is going to be really exciting. I was born in 1948, so I'm an old codger, 75 years and still moving slowly. But they say I was the first successful glaucoma operation at Johns Hopkins on a baby, because my first operation was when I was 6 months old. I had 7 eye operations as a child, and so I was able to be given some sight. What they did was they opened up my pupils by using what's known as catgut to hold the pupils open. Anyway, that got me through my youth, and I went to regular high school, went to regular school. Didn't realize I was supposed to go to anything private or anything, for people with disabilities or blindness. I got an opportunity to go to college and went to Virginia Commonwealth University. Studied 2 majors and 2 minors in law. I had sociology and psychology, law enforcement, and social welfare. But I didn't wind up doing any of that. I got out of college, and the meat of the story starts right about there, because that's when I found out that I really was considered blind. All those years growing up, I thought I was nearsighted. But then the word blindness started creeping into the vocabulary quite a bit. And I found out that I couldn't get a job, and nobody wanted to hire me. They said that their insurance wouldn't cover me. And this was back in the 60s when equal opportunity was coming along. And of course, that meant ethnicity and generics. If you were a male or female, or if you were white or black, that's what equal opportunity meant. It didn't mean wheelchair user, deaf, or blind. So with a few more years down the road, that started to improve. But so what I wound up doing after college was I borrowed $600 from a friend of mine and opened up a gas station. And before I knew it, I had 5 service stations that I either owned or managed. The oil company I worked for, which was Atlantic Richfield Oil. They sent me to school down in Florida and Orlando, and that was an experience. I would party all night and go to school all day. And one day, as a matter of fact, I actually fell asleep during the middle of class. And when I woke up, I had a signed certificate that said I could do air conditioning work, which I had no idea what that was all about. But anyway, I came back from Orlando, and I ran 5 service stations for about a couple of years. It was hard work on a blind guy. People would ask me, they drive up and they'd say, "Well, what gas is the best gas you sell?" And I would point to my Schwinn bicycle and tell them, "I have no idea. I rode that bike in today, and that's good enough for me." But actually, we had a gas called Arco Supreme, which was 101. I don't even know what they call them anymore, but anyway, so I ran gas stations and rode a Schwinn bicycle. Those days ended when my mom got fed up with me, I guess, overdoing it. And I applied to the Randolph Shepherd program, which is a specialized program. Every state has it, every state but Wyoming, where blind or visually impaired people can take some training and wind up running coffee shops, cafeterias, and that sort of thing, and especially the roadside vending for a lot of people. And I did that for a number of years. And I got tired of that after a while. The work was just wearing me out. I wound up somehow. It's an interesting story how I got into lobbying, and I'll share that with you. I was having dinner one night with a couple of friends of mine who were blind and visually impaired, and they said, "Well, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to either be a lobbyist or a legislative aide." And they said, "Well, why don't you?" Well, I just disregarded that whole conversation. And that, because it was in the wintertime. So what I was really saying was, I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I want to go home. But we had an American Council of the Blind state convention later that year, an ACB convention, and I was there. And there was a couple there who had a son who was ventilator dependent and wheelchair user, and they wanted to travel and take their son with them, but they found out that not every place was accessible for people with disabilities. So they wanted to start a catalog, sort of Virginia locations that had hotels that were accessible, parks that were accessible, anything that was accessible. They wanted to put this project together, but they needed money to publish their book. So they were talking to this person that I had talked to earlier in the winter, and they said, we need X number of dollars. And my friend said, "Well, Ken's a lobbyist. Why don't you go talk to him?" Well, I wasn't a lobbyist. I was running a coffee shop at the time. But they said, "We understand you're a lobbyist." And I said, "Yes. What can I do for you?" And they said, "We need X number of dollars from the Virginia General Assembly. Can you do it?" I said, "Of course I can. It's my job." I had no idea what I was getting into, but I learned along the way, and I was very fortunate. I wound up renting space in probably the most prestigious lobbying firm in Richmond, Virginia. So they kind of like mentored me all around. Then before I knew it, I was working in North Carolina. I was working in Tennessee. I was working in Kentucky. I was working in West Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Richmond. And I had people working with me and for me. And my specialization not only was this particular couple, because I always looked after them, but I got into the field of environmental lobbying, and that was exciting. I never really lobbied for the blind or visually impaired. I tried to, but they didn't want to pay me. They said, "Well, you're one of us. You should do it for free." Well, that doesn't pay the mortgage. So I sort of said, "No, that's not going to happen." But I really got into environmental stuff. I got to learn about how many mountains we've lost in the Blue Ridge, how many rivers and streams have been destroyed, and how many towns have been vacated, and what's happening with our environment. And so that was really, really good. We really enjoyed doing that, and I got a reputation for that, as a matter of fact. And along the way, because it's a sort of a side thing, I was chairman of the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities in the city of Virginia Beach, where I reside. And they had a sister city called Miyazaki, Japan. Well, Miyazaki, every year, the second Sunday of December, they have a marathon that's a qualifier for the Boston Marathon. And in that marathon, they have sub-marathons. They have marathons for this, that, and everything. One of the things they have a marathon for is the blind marathon. Well, they invited Virginia Beach to send a couple of runners plus someone to take care of them, me, to Japan. Well, I went one year. Next thing I knew, I was going another year. I wound up going to Japan quite a lot. I quit going in 2011, but up until 2011, from 1993 until then, I probably went once or twice a year, every year. And that to me was probably more rewarding than anything I can think of. We really enjoyed going over there. I took my wife a couple of times, In fact, one time my wife and I were the guest speakers at a disability conference, and that went real well. I'm trying to think of something else I might be able to talk about that could be interesting to the group. I wrote a book. The book is about funny things that happened along the way. It's called "It Was Just a Phase," and you can get it on Amazon, I think, for free. I think Amazon gave up on making money with me. I think it's a free book. I mean, I've got tons of it. I mean,
you're supposed to be promoting yourself on my podcast, and then you confess to the book. You shouldn't admit that it's free.
Well,
you aren't supposed to say that.
Only for your listeners, $9.95. Okay.
Okay. Well, I thought it was free. Okay. Anyway.
No, for your listeners, 1 day special, $9.95. Everybody else free. Oh my word.
Oh man. Well, let me just jump in here. When you came in today and said that you were one of the first, you had one of the first successful eye operations at Johns Hopkins. Well, that brings back a lot of memories. I don't discuss where I'm living on the air like this, but I can tell you that in the past I lived in Maryland with my parents, and most of my life was spent going back and forth from Johns Hopkins. And my cornea specialist was the number one cornea specialist in the world at Johns Hopkins during my lifetime, and he's now since retired, rightfully so, and well deserved. But that's incredibly fascinating that you were one of the first babies to ever be successfully operated on regarding to glaucoma and things like that. That's really, really fascinating. But equally fascinating on top of all of that is I can tell you that I am not a lobbyist myself. However, I have participated a lot with NFB when they go, especially when I was living in Maryland. I would go once a year to their, as we called it, their day in Annapolis, where we would go and take the issues that are important to us about legislation and sort of, it's not lobbying, but very similar to it. So, and I'm not, I would say I'm kind of neutral about NFB, neither here nor there, but still I help them out with their efforts each year, and they helped me out in some other ways that have really nothing to do with this episode. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting how you got into the environmental stuff, and what do you really think as far as if someone comes to you and they say, well, how should or how do we approach the notion of self-advocacy and lobbying when you have a disability, especially blindness? What do you really think about the structure of our government and the structure of things right now? What do you really think about what's really going on? Why don't you dig into that for a bit?
Well, now that I've given you an overview and touched a little bit on everything,
sure,
I'll be glad to delve a little bit deeper into lobbying and even give your listeners some tips on what I did as a lobbyist that got me further ahead. Because as a person with a disability, you've got to do things a little differently. So I am a lifetime member of the National Federation of the Blind. I established the Virginia Beach chapter, which is probably the largest chapter in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm also the past president of the Old Dominion Council of the Blind, which is affiliated with the American Council of the Blind. So I wear both hats, even though some people don't like that. That's, it happens. It just happens. What can I say? But I can tell you that the NFB will go to Washington, D.C. They call it the Washington Seminar. And they will go there in late January, early February. And the ACB will go there late February, early March, which is really counterproductive because the first thing that the ACB hears is, weren't you guys just here? No. Well, anyway, here's what I learned working in Washington. The best time to go to Washington now, everybody grab your pencils and a piece of paper or your slate and stylus or whatever you're using. This is important. the best time to go to Washington to talk to your Congress is the fall, not the spring or not the winter, the fall. Nobody comes in there. Well, when they say nobody, they mean less than 500,000 people. But very few people show up between early September and Christmas. And that could be because there's a lot of holidays built into that particular time frame. But that's the time you get more time with your delegates and with your senators. And they prefer that, because when people come in January and February and March, that's the busiest time of the session. And that's when they've got so many constituents. How many times have y'all said, well, we got to meet with our delegate or our representative in the hallway? And that happens a lot. That does happen a lot. But if you go in the fall, odds are you'll get a room and a chair. And here's what I tell people to do. When you're going up to DC or even your state capital, wherever you're going and you're going to talk to politicians, get some business cards made up. And when you go to them, present your business card, because that will have your name, address, your phone number, and that's how they can get in touch with you. And then after you've met with them, within 10 days, send them an email thanking them for their time. Even if it's not the elected official, get the business card of the person you talk to. Thank them. And I'll tell you why. Because when their boss is no longer working there, they may be. I've had more opportunities to see my business grow because I'd be talking to a delegate from Virginia and their legislative aide. The delegate leaves because they didn't get reelected. The aide goes to another state. Guess what? I now have a connection in that state. So you want to do that. You want to always make sure you got business cards. You want to go visit in the fall. And I can tell you that check your state delegation, find out what they do in Washington. For instance, in Tennessee, they have what they call Tennessee Tuesday up in Washington, D.C. Anybody from Tennessee can go up, and it was Bob Corker and Lamar Alexander. Those are the two senators that used to be the senators for Tennessee. They may still be, I'm not sure. But they would always have Tennessee Tuesday, and you could get coffee and donuts, and there'd be different groups there. So you get to meet different groups and why they're there and who they want to see. I used to go there, and I wasn't even in Tennessee. I'm from Virginia. But they thought I lived in Tennessee. They'd say, where are you from? I said, Virginia Beach. Where's that? I said, far northeast corner of Virginia Beach. Of Tennessee. But I got my picture taken with them. What the heck? That's the name of the game. Politicians love their pictures being taken with anybody. And so here's another thing to do before you meet them in the fall. The month of August is completely free. That's their vacation month. Invite them to your group in August. Invite them and have them come and visit with you, and have your list of wants at that point. You don't want to give them a page with 25 things. You want to give them a sheet of paper thanking them for their visit to your group and asking for one, maybe two things, and that's it. And remind them when you go visit them in the fall, remind them of those two things, because that's how you get things done. I'm trying to think of something else that might be of benefit along those lines. I think that pretty much does it. You want to make friends with your elected officials. You want them to know who you are. Here recently, a temporary Speaker of the House was a gentleman named McHenry from North Carolina. Well, I happen to know McHenry, and I know him because another friend of mine is a good friend of his. And that's how I know him. Now, if he had been made Speaker of the House and I was still working because I've been retired for 3 years, then that would be a perfect in for me, because I would be working. I would have an in with the Speaker. Oh, man, you can't do better than that. So that's politically speaking, that's what you do. You have to do things. You have to show up. You have to be on the local scene and the national scene. If you want to be a national lobbyist, if you want to be a state lobbyist, that's different altogether. There's so many different things you can do. Like there's different dinners. Every party has a dinner once a month. Every party has a Saturday morning breakfast, which is unbelievable. I mean, when I was young, I used to get up and go to those things. Now that I'm old, no, let's have a Saturday afternoon lunch. You know, I don't want to get up at 6 in the morning just to go sit around with a bunch of old people. I keep forgetting that's part of what I am. Anyway, you really want to get local, get regional, get state, and get national. And once you've done that, and it doesn't take long, you've got yourself some friends, and they will do what you ask them to do as long as it's reasonable. And also, they'll call on you when they have an issue dealing with blindness. They don't know blindness. I had a client. I'm gonna digress a little bit. I had a client called Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic.
Mm-hmm.
They have a new name now. Anyway,
Learning Alley, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is how I made my bones, as the mafia would say. I never got turned down for anything I asked from the Virginia General Assembly. Well, I was lobbying for something for the Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic, and at the same time, a future client of mine, who I didn't realize at the time, was a group called the Virginia Voice, and their audio recordings that they do volunteer readers of the newspapers and magazines, that sort of thing, over a subcarrier. So they were asking for the exact same thing I was asking for. Not just, I mean, the same amount of money, the same amount of equipment, everything. It was really weird. So every year, the governor's budget comes out at 12:01 at night. I'm there, I'm at my house checking the governor's budget. I'm not in it. I did not get in the budget like I always do. But the Virginia Voice got in it. So I go into the General Assembly the next day, and everybody's patting me on the back, and they're saying, "Hey, you got your money." I said, "No, you gave it to this other group." Well, it didn't take long before they realized that they had made a mistake, and they didn't know how to correct it because, see, the House has a budget and the Senate has a budget, and the budget committees have to meet from each one, and they meet together and they sort of make a budget that goes to the governor. Well, the problem is, if it's not in the House budget and it's not in the Senate budget, it can't go into the main budget as a rule. I'm the only lobbyist that anybody can recall that actually had nothing going into the budget, but coming out of the budget, I had my money. And I mean, I promised my firstborn male child, I promised everything. Thank God I didn't have any male children. But anyway, I got what I wanted out of that deal, but that's when I really realized I was good at what I did. I mean, I could not believe I didn't get what I was supposed to get from my client, but I wound up getting it. And those are little incidents that, you know, you just never forget. You know, it happens. One of my clients on a national level used to send me all over the country. I mean, I traveled to, San Antonio, San Diego, San Francisco. I got to thinking that if the word "san" is in front of anything, I was going to wind up there at some point. And it was always a lot of fun traveling. But being visually impaired, I would have to have, you know, somebody meet me at the gate. How many of the listeners out there right now have said they're visually impaired, they're using a cane, or they're not using a cane, depending on their level of sight. And when they get to the boarding area, or they're getting off the plane, there's somebody with a wheelchair looking for him. You know, we can walk. We don't need a wheelchair. I would refuse it. refuse it. And I think things have changed since I've been traveling, because I haven't traveled a lot since before COVID. Is there anything else you might want me to touch on real quick as far as lobbying is concerned, or do you have any questions on that?
Absolutely. I mean, everything you're covering is just amazing. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, this is so beneficial to so many listeners who are blind and are wondering about all this. A lot of times when I was doing my advocacy, or I mean, it technically wasn't lobbying, but we can just sort of lump the word in there. When I was, doing more NFB stuff in Maryland,
You were educating.
okay, when I was educating in Maryland, and you know that I'm also a teacher. When I was educating in Maryland, I also noticed that, NFB a lot of times has a lot of different issues that they advocate for to the local, to the state assembly, to the delegates or senators. And I always thought from time to time, I would agree with, two or three of these issues. But then one year, there was just an issue, and in my heart, it was just a silly issue. It was about, this was many years ago, it was about saying that we don't like, scooters to be on the streets, or, those
The little birds, yeah.
Indeed. And I just think that, sometimes, and obviously you can correct me or not, I think if you're going to lobby and educate people at the state and national level, you need to pick and choose what issues you're lobbying on. What issues are important enough for blind people to be speaking up about? And I don't think that's an easy question, but what do you think? What are the most important issues that we do need to tell our elected officials about and speak up about? What do you think?
Well, you brought out a good point, because when you do, and see, the difference between lobbying and educating is that if you lobby, you're making you're making an ask. You're asking for something. If you educate, you're not really asking directly, you're asking indirectly by telling them the situation and hoping that they will pick up on it. but you have to be very careful with what you're asking for, because to you, your issue is very important. To you, that issue is like number one for the NFB or the ACB. But what you need to find out before you even make a move, who will oppose it? Most people, you'd be surprised. I don't care what the issue is. There's going to be some group that's going to oppose it. So you need to find out who your opposition is and how you can negotiate with them. Negotiating is probably the strongest point of being a good lobbyist. You have to know how to give and take, because the lobbyist on the other side of the table from you today could be your friend next week, depending on what's going on. As far as number one issue for us in this country, it would depend on each state has got its own set of issues. Each national group has got its own set of issues. As a personal thing for me, I would dearly love to see Braille on dollar bills. I think I mean it's like that in other countries. It's not that it can't be done, but for some reason we just don't do it, and we can't do it for some reason. You can always tell when you've dealt with someone who's visually impaired. The dollar bill, when you open it up, it feels folded. You can tell it's either a 5 or a 10 or a 20 or a 1 because of the way it's been folded by that person. But actually, seriously, I think Braille on money, that's important. That's one thing, but that's only one of a myriad of things. I belong to a group that likes to listen to different things, and how do we access the opportunity to listen to music, because there's so many dials on the computer screen. You've got to be able to read that. There's a big conflict between cell phone users. I mean, I myself am an Android person, but it seems like the people that have the Apple phones, they're the happiest people. They seem to really like their phones. but Apple marketed to blind people, and Android never did. So, I mean, it's hard to say what would be a major issue for us as a community right now. Oh, I'm just sitting here thinking back. This shows you how out of touch I was growing up. I got married in 1973, the first time, but we won't go into that. But my wife and I got a house. We bought a house in 1976, and the first house we had was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and it cost $27,000. That shows you how times have changed. But one thing I learned through the NFB, the NFB put out a nice history of blindness in Virginia years ago. And that is, up until 1972, blind people couldn't own houses. I'd never heard of such a thing. I would not know how to react if I had gone to get a house and they would have said, you can't have this house because you're blind. I'd be in jail even today, probably. I just don't understand how that thought process happened. But then back in the early 70s and 80s and 90s, and even up till today, I think in some states, there's issues with blind parents having children. So, we're just like anybody else. That's the way I look at it. We live life like anyone else. What do blind people talk about? Whatever the hell you talk about. That's what we talk about. And you're a member of a couple of the groups, so we just let it all hang out. And it's great. I've learned so much by being around my friends who are blind and visually impaired. And I worked in it all my life, but I worked in it from the other side, the rehab side. But by being a client or by being a person with a disability, I've learned so many things from this group, who will remain nameless because we're not advertising them. But anyway, that's the way I feel about major issues. I think every state's got its own major issues. We've got issues in Virginia Beach. We have chirpers just across the street, right? But once the chirper dies, do they come back and fix it? No, you got to go remind them. But in Virginia Beach, we have issues. So you've got issues in your home area, you've got issues in your state area, and we've got national issues. And if you don't belong to the NFB or the ACB, you need to belong to one or the other because they speak for you. They are the people that the federal government listens to. There's my plug.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I think all that's very interesting. When you brought up the housing thing, of course, I'm sure you know of, if not, hopefully you've spoken with, I'm sure you're friends with Peggy, as in the blind history lady, right?
Mm-mm.
No?
No. Peggy?
Yeah. Yeah, there's this you would love her website. So there's this famous blind historian, very well known. She's from the western part of the country. I've actually interviewed her years ago. So if you have any history questions about blindness, about what she's dug up about blindness in history and government, I'm absolutely gobsmacked that you didn't know who that person was. Because she's almost as famous as you are. She's done so what she does, to give her a plug, because she's just like you, another fascinating friend to have, another fascinating person. She's basically Google for blind history. So if you have a question about who were famous blind people in the past from hundreds of years ago, the legislation from a long time ago, yeah, I'll definitely, you know what? Later today, I'll dig up one of her emails because I'm on her list, and I'll just shoot it over to you because you've got to talk to her. I'm shocked that you haven't, but she would know when you mentioned the housing thing. She would know what the history is about that and be able to say, well, here's why it was the way it was then, and here's why it is the way it is now. But Peggy, the history lady. The blind history lady, Peggy Chong. Yeah, shocked you haven't heard of her. She is a major, but she's from, I think. Now I'm going off my memory now. Either Colorado or Arizona. She's in the western part of the country, so you might not have ever encountered her. But She has a lot. Anyway, when you brought up that thing about the housing, that's who I thought. I was like, well, Peggy Chong would know. Interesting though, really fascinating. And yeah, I mean, those are all incredible, really incredible issues that you've brought up. I mean, I think, the other factor is that a lot of blind people are not attending university, right? So I think a huge issue is to make sure that blind people are able to access their materials and get a proper and appropriate education. That has been an issue in my personal life. Don't worry. There's 2 articles that were written about me about 20 years ago. I'll send those to you later today too. But I have quite a history of advocacy, as you do. With my mother has done a tremendous amount for blind parents and things like that, and it's just all really fascinating. Yeah. So nowadays, have you found, or do you know of any other blind lobbyists who are currently working, that are like younger people that are working as lobbyists now?
No. Generally, I used to tell people that I'm part of the old school where I was an actual lobbyist. Now lobbyists are mostly attorneys. You get a young kid out of law school, whether it's a male or female, and they get a job with a law firm, and the law firm will give them, they'll give them a stack of papers and say, this is our client, they want this from the General Assembly, do it. And I've seen that happen more and more. Of course, my crowd loves it because they don't know how to lobby. They know how to ask for what they want, but they don't know how to lobby. And so they don't make friends. We always say we make friends with our General Assembly members because it's important to make friends with them. Whether you're blind or not, they want to do the best they can for their constituents, but they don't know what to do if somebody doesn't come up and talk to them. And so when I walk up to a member of the General Assembly or member of the U.S. Congress, I always remind them who I am because they see thousands of people. I'll go, my name's Ken Jessup. Remember me? I helped you with the bioptic lens driving bill. I never worked on the bioptic lens driving bill, but I have a member of the House of Delegates and the House of Representatives in Washington who thinks I helped him with that bill when he was in Virginia, and I never did. So I have to remind him that I did, and he remembers me right away. It's so funny. I mean, but I keep telling him I didn't do it. I've got a member of the city of Virginia Beach. The vice mayor is a wonderful woman. She grew up 2 blocks from me, and she went to a different high school than I did. But she tells everybody we went to high school together. And I keep saying, no, we were in the same neighborhood. We didn't go to the same high school, but you just let it go at that. But you always remind them something, talk to, and keep your pictures and things like that. And, I'm gonna. There's an app. It's called Congress. If you download that app, it will have every member of Congress, senators and members of the House from your state. And all you have to do is just click on the name of your representative. It will tell you the bills that they sponsor. It will tell you what they're doing at the time. It will tell you what they voted on. It will tell you everything about them. It will even give you the opportunity to call them directly. So that's some good information there. Just don't call them every day, and don't mention my name. That's the important thing. I don't need that. But that will get you into a lot of doors if you download the app called Congress and use it wisely. Let's see, where else were we going with this? There's so much to do with the lobbying aspect of of everything. I write an article every quarter for a magazine. It's called The Lighter Side of Lobbying, and I can tell you a couple of stories from that magazine and my book if you'd like.
Absolutely.
There's some lighter moments. One of them, oh my gosh, and I remind my wife of this every year. It gets very, very cold in the wintertime on the East Coast, and we get the wet snow where I work. So it's miserable. Anyway, one year my wife came up from Virginia Beach to bring me back home after a session in Virginia. And Virginia Beach has totally different weather than Richmond. Right now, the weather's beautiful. It's in the 60s. Rest of the state is cold. Anyway, it was bitter cold. It was like, gosh, I would say it was probably in the high teens when I got in the car for us to go home. I'm wearing a very lightweight suit. I mean, I'm not wearing an overcoat or anything. I'm in the car. That's where I want to be. And my wife tells me that Saxon Shoes is having a sale. Now, I've never heard of Saxon Shoes, but evidently every woman on the East Coast has heard of Saxon Shoes, and they're having a sale. So I said, okay, what do you want to do about it? Well, let's drive over to the mall and check it out. Now, this is at 7 o'clock in the morning, and she drives over to this mall, which happens to be an outdoor mall, by the way, which means as soon as you get out of the car, there's no door to run to. You're outside until, ready for this, 10 o'clock when the mall opens up. And it's 2 hours in the freezing cold until the mall opens up. Finally, we go inside. She goes around the shoe store, doesn't buy a single damn pair of shoes. I told her, I said, you're only alive right now because I need a ride home. I said, if I didn't need a ride home, you would be dead. And even today we laugh about it, but God, I couldn't believe it. Another incident this was really funny. Virginia, as you know, just passed marijuana laws a couple of years back. I worked on some of that. Yeah, I worked on some of that mess. And anyway, the first year the marijuana group was at the General Assembly, they failed miserably. Well, they were all stoners, for one thing. And I told the people that were there, I said, y'all need to wear suits and ties. You need to look a little respectable. Cut your hair, do something. But you need to be looking respectable because you're looking exactly like what they don't want to see on the street. Well, the next year and the year after that, they started doing that. They started looking a little more respectable. But there were so many in the General Assembly when at a committee hearing that the committee said, line up if you're pro-marijuana on this one side of the room, if you're anti on the other. We will call you up. You just give us your name, where you're from, and that's all we need to know. Well, as most people know, every committee in government is made up of both parties. However, the party in power is the party that has the chairperson. So in other words, if the Democrats are in power, there would be a committee of 15, 8 would be Democrats, 7 would be Republicans. And so, you always have, the balance is always in favor of the party in power, always. So I go into this committee meeting, it's a Senate meeting, and the senators are giving them the spiel about line up on one side of the wall, et cetera, et cetera. And everybody's giving their speech. And a lot of your Republican senators really believe that marijuana is a gateway drug to something else. I don't know what. But anyway, it came time for me to get up there, and they were glad to see me because they all know me. And I said, Senator, you are correct. Marijuana does create problems in life. and I could just see the grins on the Republican faces. I said, I was in a Safeway the other night, and I heard a commotion on one of the aisles. I looked down the aisle, and there were two people arguing over chocolate chip cookies or cream filled. And they looked at me like they were going to kill me. Anyway, we walked out of that meeting, and I heard a couple of the stoners going, we almost got the bill passed. It was 8-7. And I'm like, you never had a chance. But see, the average citizen doesn't know that. Yeah, I mean, it was trumped up from the beginning. 8-7 was exactly how the vote was going to go. God. But anyway, I think that's in my book. I'm not sure. Yeah, I wrote the book so long ago, I forgot. But now there's a picture on the cover of me standing at the podium of the United States Senate, which is really an honor. I was talking outside of a room with John McCain, and he had to go inside. There was some committee hearing where Ben Affleck was giving a statement, and I always tell people, Ben Affleck, the insurance guy, but in reality, he's actually Ben Affleck is actually an actor. Anyway, John McCain said, give me 10 minutes and I'll be right back. So I got 10 minutes to kill. And my wife always says, when I have nothing to do, I get in trouble. So I look next door to this committee room that's filled with people from the media. There's nobody next door except all these empty chairs and this podium. So I go diddy bopping up to the podium, and I've got a friend. I said, take some pictures. And I'm doing all these, President Nixon, give me high five type things. And then I'm walking down the walkway to get out of the room. In comes 200 high school kids. And I'm like, oh my God, they probably think I'm somebody, because I had the little thing on my lapel saying I was somebody, even though I'm not really anybody, but they didn't know that. And I'm like, thank God they didn't come in here 30 seconds earlier. I would have had to play the part. And I would have stood right there and said, all right, is there a question from the audience? God. And that's what blind people do. We get in trouble.
Wow. I mean, all incredibly interesting and very, very endearing for sure. For sure. I mean, the thing is, with some of the delegates from Maryland when I was there that I worked with, I worked with them a lot, and one of them, since I'm sure by now, I don't know, I'm sure he's retired by now, but one of them, he had me. I actually worked on one of my delegates' campaigns. He was running for Congress. Yeah, so I've actually done this before. So at least I can tell this guy that I'm sure is now retired. I'll call him just to cover it. I'll call him. Let's say his name is Mr. Oliver. Let's come up with a name similar. I'd say, Delegate Oliver, don't you remember that I helped you on your campaign when you were running against, and this is a true story, when he was running against Steny Hoyer. And
I was going to mention Steny.
And so he ran against him at one point. I was on his campaign, making the phone calls and stuff like that. It's just the difference is I can tell that person, Mr. Oliver, don't you remember me? I helped you to run against Steny Hoyer. And that part is true, except so I have something true that I did that they can actually really remember, but I'm sure that they may or may not remember. They probably do though. But that's all very interesting. But yeah, in Maryland, that's always a major race. Anyone who ran against Steny Hoyer, nobody was able to defeat him. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And see, now we're running out of time, so you give me something to finish up with.
Sure.
I knew Steny pretty well. Mm-hmm. But one of the other things that I started when I was telling people what to do and how to learn how to educate. Mm-hmm. One of the things I always say as a blind lobbyist, get to know your delegate, your member of the House or your senator, get to know what they do for a living, what their spouse does for a living, where they come from, what their religion is, get to know everything about them. And the reason I say this is because just a good example, Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco, California, the never say I will die, Nancy Pelosi, who will never, she'll outlive all of us. Guess where she's from? You might know.
I actually don't.
She's from Baltimore. Her dad was the mayor of Baltimore. That's why Steny Hoyer didn't get the speaker's position. She knew how to play the game. And see, a lot of people don't know these things. Always know the dirt, not just the clean dirt, but the dirty dirt. Because when you know somebody is, I had a lobbyist come into our office one day and all upset because they didn't get what they wanted from a committee. And I said, let me see a list of the committee members. I said, this person right here, that's the person that you didn't get to, isn't it? And they said, yep. I said, that's the person that stopped everything. Always get to know everything about the people in the room. And if you don't know the people in the room, check them out before you get there, because they're the ones that you're going to be working with. And always pause at the door to a conference room. So walk to the door frame, count to 3, then walk in. Because when you stop at the door frame, people are going to turn and look. They want to know who's coming in. There's a lot of little tricks. I wish I had time to tell you some more, but that's good enough. This will get enough blind people in trouble. You know, we're good.
So in the remaining 10 minutes, greatly appreciate all your wisdom and all your just all the great material. So wonderful. So I'm sure though, I'm 100% positive that you have a lot of questions for this Aaron Richmond guy and Aaron's opinion. So really, really get under my skin. And I know you can really make me sweat. So go for it. I mean, you know, what do you really want to know about me?
Well, actually, I think the first time I heard you was about a year ago when you were going to interview Jason. What's Jason's last name? Jason.
Oh, the Canadian.
Jason from the lake. But anyway.
You mean you're talking about Jason Reynolds?
Reynolds.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean, so I've never heard of a podcast from a blind perspective before.
Right.
So I did go and check out a couple of things on your podcast, which I was impressed with.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
In fact, I plan to spread the contact information around. I know that you're in Florida, and I didn't know you were a teacher. And I don't know how old you are. I don't want to know that. So, you know, I don't need to know a whole lot about you, except if you were somebody I was lobbying, I'd want to know your religion, your marital status, your age, when's your birthday. I'd want to know a lot of that stuff, your anniversary date, you know, things like that, because I would be sending you text messages constantly on that.
Right, because it builds rapport. It's about the rapport.
It does. Right. It really. In fact, I got a lot of compliments in the past because I would be the only person to send a text congratulations to some people, and they would say, you know, you're the only one that sent me a text congratulations on my birthday. I said, well, I can't get to a store. I can't pick out a card, but I can send you an email. I can send you a text, you know, and that meant a lot to them that I took that much time. So I can tell you that what I can tell about you is that you've put forth an awful lot of work into your podcast.
Thank you.
An awful lot of work. I was actually very impressed. And when I was doing a test today to come in, because I always want to make sure I've got the most up-to-date Zoom software, it came up, Aaron's opinion. And I'm like, damn, he's got an opinion on just me getting my updates. You know? So I was impressed with what you've got. And I think you've got a good thing going. I don't know if you have a sponsorship or not, but you should. I mean, you know, somebody, because a lot of podcasts have sponsors.
Right. Well, certainly we're working towards we're slowly working towards that. But yeah, I mean, what is a question I always like to say? If you can only ask me one question to make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt, what do you want to ask? What's a question that you really want to ask just about me?
God, I hope you're not a Tampa Bay fan. Just what would I want to know? And that brings up an interesting thing, because when you ask people that, immediately people go into like, this is what I do, but that's not what people want to know. Who are you? Do you play chess?
I used to a very long time ago, never got good enough at it to keep up with the hobby, but chess is an amazing game for sure.
See, yes. Now that's something when I meet somebody, I always want to know what their sport is, and I always like to shake their hand, and I can tell you from a handshake whether I'm going to be in control of the conversation or not. I can always tell.
Right.
But yeah, I'd want to know if you play chess, because if you play chess, then that tells me you've got the type of mind that I've got to deal with, and I'm going to have to be able to play against. And I do like to play chess.
That's good.
I would want to know, what kind of food do you like? Now,
well, I have a lot of roots in Eastern Europe, so I like a lot of Eastern European food. Of course, as you may or may not know, I'm also a French speaker, so I love going to France and eating French food and eating, organ meat and livers and things like that.
Yeah, I'm vegetarian.
Well, you're vegetarian. You didn't tell me come on, you're vegetarian?
Yeah, I'm going on year number 3. I saw a documentary on Netflix called What the Health, and it convinced me right then and there. My next door neighbor was a vegetarian, and so whenever we would go out to dinner, I would order my food to be vegetarian, because I show respect.
Right.
And so she used to say, "Did I make you become a vegetarian?" No. I saw this documentary, and it was very, very compelling.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, I've been 3 years now, and almost, and I my HDL and my LDL are perfect. My triglycerides are perfect. Blood pressure's fine. Everything's fine. And they, what do people with low blood pressure die from? Old age. That's what they tell me. So, but yeah, I'd want to know what kind of foods you eat, because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's have lunch together. And then over lunch, see, that takes away some of the stress. Food takes away the stress. And when you take away the stress, you can get an honest answer out of people.
Right. But for me, you see, if you were dining with me, it would probably add to your stress, because I'd be over here pounding down organ meat in my mouth, drinking my nice nice French beer. And I think it would actually add to your stress, because then I would be just worrying about eating with a vegetarian. So that sounds really stressful. I don't think it would relax you. I think it would scare you. Actually, I think you would be. But maybe you're a vegetarian because you watched that documentary. Maybe you never know. There might have been a lobbyist. See, I think you were a victim of lobbyism. Maybe the lobbyist behind that documentary. Maybe they're pushing a little opinion at you here, and you took it hook, line, and sinker.
I knew the national lobbyist for the American Beef Association.
Oh, okay.
She's quite the gorgeous woman. a lot of these associations, they call them associations, but they're really lobbying firms. Hire good-looking girls to be their spokespeople.
Sure, of course.
Yeah,
cool, man. Cool. So good. So I'm sure I know that we're going to get a lot of comments today after this beautiful recording. So by the way, if someone does want to get in touch with Ken Jessup for a variety of reasons. Where could someone track you down and find you these days?
Okay, if they don't have any bomb making material, they can find me at Ken Jessup, KenJessup at cox.net, net. And I check my email about every other day. And also, I'm around the internet quite a bit. I mean, I'm trying to think. That would be the best way to find me is through I'm also on Facebook. I forgot. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm the only Ken Jessup still standing. I think there was another one at one time, and he passed away. His wife sent me a CD of his funeral service, and it felt so good hearing people say nice things about Ken Jessup. And I said, I'm going to keep this because when I die, I want it played at my funeral. I mean, it was so nice.
That's bizarre. That's cool. Okay, this is how you get into trouble. That's questionable. Okay, have you ever heard of karma? Okay, that you're gonna have to work on that karma, but people will work on sending you emails, and I'm sure that you're gonna get a lot of reaction. I'm certainly gonna share this around too, and of course it'll be part of the public record here on the podcast and around the whole podcast space. But Mr. Jessup, Ken Jessup, you're an incredible person, brilliant, just a brilliant guy to have around in any office and things like that. The lunch date, I don't know, man. I don't know. Those vegetarians, they scare. But I would definitely, I'm 100% sure that moving forward in my life, I know that if I need to ask for professional advice about these types of advocacy issues, lobbying issues, government issues, how to talk to so and so, I'll definitely talk to you about it. Thanks so much.
I'm old. Do it soon.
Okay. All right. I'll say we'll see what we can come up with. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll be back next time. Take care. Blessings to you, Mr. Jessup. Take care of yourself up there in Virginia. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day in Virginia Beach. Take care, man.
Thank you so much.
Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow. If you're still surviving, if you're still one of the few survivors who's with us on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us today on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Click the link in the description for more information about Ken Jessup. We'll see you later. And I'm going to go prepare my organ meat and beer from my beef meal that I have to have now.
Oh, God.
You should have, you should have never, I'm never going to forget you. Now I'm going to remember. Ken Jessup, the lobbyist, but most importantly, Ken Jessup, a vegetarian who became a lobbyist.
That's
there
right.
There you go. Oh boy.
God.
Oh boy. I'm going to get people really wound up about. Oh boy. I'm going to get into some trouble about this. That's okay. Right. Before, as you like to say, before this gets any worse, thanks so much, everybody. Comment below and share the video. Don't forget to subscribe and tickle the bell notification to know when we go live next here at Aaron's Opinion. Comment below. Take care of yourself, and you're always welcome here on Aaron's Opinion. Take care, everybody. We'll be back soon.